A huge ring of fire is coming. Are you about to get cooked? Hey everybody, welcome back to Extreme Weather Zone. In this video, we'll be looking at this extreme weather pattern, the ring of fire, and it's going to be bringing extreme heat for some people and severe weather for others. And things look like they're going to get even worse towards mid-June. We'll also see if the tropics will be heating up anytime soon. But first, if you're new here, please be sure to hit the subscribe button for more extreme weather updates. So here's the 500 millibar heights, and this kind of shows where there's above average heights and above average temperatures, and where there's below average heights and below average temperatures. And so this is going through this weekend. You kind of have some above average heights kind of over the southwest, but those kind of break down, and temperatures will probably be near average until look what happens towards this is Monday afternoon, Monday evening. You have kind of troughing in the Pacific Northwest, and you have this ridging starting to build in from the Pacific, and that's going to be, creating this huge ring of fire ridge over time. And so this is what happens. You could see pretty quickly this huge ridge explodes over the west coast, and this is pretty extreme. You have these way above average heights, and then what happens is it creates this thing where it pushes the storms around it down into the Midwest, and you have this pretty decent trough, which will bring colder temperatures and also severe weather potential. And then see what happens. This ridge actually it builds even further, and then pushes the most of those way above average temperatures even further to the north. And then that continues all the way into June 10th. So this is really all of next week. After you get past like Tuesday, then the rest of the week into next weekend, definitely gonna have this huge ridge over the west, and then troughing over the eastern part of the U.S., bringing those. There's actually gonna be cooler temperatures there. Mid-level winds. You have really not much happening there until you get towards Tuesday, and you have this pattern where you have the winds really go across the Pacific Northwest, where you have that storm, and then this ridge kind of starting to build under it, and then you have a trough here, and so there could be severe weather actually across the Midwest. And then look what happens. It gets even more extreme as you go into kind of the Wednesday evening. You have this huge ridge over the western U.S., bringing those way above average temperatures, even record heat potentially in some areas. It doesn't look quite as bad as it did a couple days ago on the forecast, but still pretty extreme heat. Then you have this pretty intense trough, and so you could probably still have severe weather in this whole area. It actually looks a bit less extreme than it did even yesterday. So we'll see what happens there, but it's still kind of intense. This is pretty interesting because the ridge amplifies even more. It goes even further north into Canada, and then you have this huge trough across. This is actually pretty big. So then that stays in place, and then even all the way into June 10th, and then you have a cutoff low, I think, that tries to push in towards California, but then that generally huge ridge is still there, and then you still have troughs over the eastern half of the U.S. And the temperatures, you're going to have really above average temperatures now over the southwest, but then it gets worse. You do have some areas of below average temperatures, but then look what happens. Really going into Wednesday, you have that extreme heat across the southwest. You have temperatures possibly 20 to 30 degrees above average in some areas. Like, yeah, that's pretty bad. And then this keeps building further north, and then this is going into next weekend, June 7th and 8th. You have those cooler temperatures going into the northern plains, the Midwest, those areas, and then that extreme heat is still pushing northward across the western U.S. and going into western Canada, while you have all these colder temperatures there across the northern central plains and the Midwest, and even going into the south, below average temperatures. That's pretty interesting. And then it could get worse into mid-June and actually change again. You have all that heat, and then look what happens. This is the GFS saying by like June 13th, 14th, you have colder temperatures in the western U.S., and then what really starts to happen is you have all those colder temperatures over the west, and then even the southern Canada, the northern plains, and then a lot of heat across the eastern half of the U.S. And this could definitely lead to a bunch of severe weather. There could actually be more severe weather outbreaks coming by mid-June. Right now, there's not as much severe weather as there was a couple weeks ago. You still have this kind of daily explosion of severe storms across kind of Texas and the areas just east of the southern part of the Rocky Mountains. And then you have that, and then you also have excessive heat watches across the Sacramento Valley in California, where there's going to be temperatures, over 105 degrees possibly. But, it was looking like definitely record heat, but it actually doesn't look quite as extreme as it did. You could have temperatures definitely over 100 degrees in California, and temperatures even probably approaching 110 degrees in the Southwest, towards the middle of next week. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are probably the hottest days, but it's not necessarily going to be record-breaking. This is the kind of what the temperatures look like, and you have temperatures that go up into the 80s, 90s this weekend, but it's not too extreme until you look what happens. Like, there is a lot of heat in Texas, temperatures in the 90s, over 100 degrees in some places, and Florida. But then, just see what happens. You actually have, by Tuesday, it's warming up, and you have temperatures possibly 106 degrees in central California, and then you have temperatures actually not as hot directly in the the Southwest, like Arizona and stuff like that. You have temperatures maybe a little over 100, but it's not actually as hot as it will be in northern central California. And then you have Texas, definitely over 100 degrees there too. But then it gets even more extreme. This is Wednesday. Looks like, yeah, definitely the hottest day. You could have temperatures over 110 degrees in central California, and also close to 110 in Arizona, and also in Texas. But really, California is going to be cooked, and it also continues. This is Thursday afternoon. It's still, it could be the same or worse as that ridge kind of pushes northward. Most of that heat, and then it goes into the Pacific Northwest, where you have temperatures in the 90s. But then you notice that there's cooler temperatures sliding down across the northern plains and the kind of upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. So extreme heat for some and not so much for others. And then going into next weekend, temperatures really, it starts heating up across the south, and some of that heat tones down across the West Coast. Maybe it only gets into the 80s by next weekend, but then you have temperatures going into the low 40s across like Minnesota. And then by Sunday, next Sunday, June 10th, it's like, or June 9th, still it's going to be still hot, but not as extreme actually at all for those areas. But then the actual heat index could be even worse, like across, especially in Texas. It's like, the heat index is pretty extreme. You actually have, with this heat wave, you could have, the heat index over 110 degrees in South Texas, in the 90s, close to 100 in Florida, and then heat indexes in the 80s all the way up to into the Great Lakes on on Tuesday. But then the heat over in California is going to be drier, so it's not going to be like heat indexes of 115 or 120 or anything. Temperatures, the feels like temperatures will be over 100 though. But then in Texas, heat indexes still over 100 for a while. It does, you're gonna have even heat indexes going close to 100 in the Carolinas next Sunday. So it could start cooling down a little bit in the western U.S., but then the South will also get cooked, and temperatures stay cool across the Minnesota, even the Rocky Mountains. You have feels like temperatures of in the 20s and 30s, and also the 30s across like northern Minnesota. So you have that colder air sliding down across that area too. But also the GFS, it shows further out, like closer to mid-June, where it's going to get worse. The pattern basically changes. You could have more extreme heat across Texas. The heat index definitely over 110 degrees, possibly. And then it really gets worse. Once you get to like June 14th, you have heat indexes over 100 all the way into Kansas, Missouri, even pushing into Illinois a little bit. Heat indexes in the 90s. And so that heat dome really pushes across that area too. And it expands even more. You have heat indexes almost 100 degrees, in Ohio, even towards Michigan. So definitely pretty extreme, with all that heat that's gonna build, and that'll be really hot and humid, and then the potential for severe weather. And this is the Climate Prediction Center. They have from June 6th to 10th, definitely well above average temperatures across the western half of the U.S., Texas, and the southeast, especially Florida. And then those cooler temperatures, below average temperatures in the Midwest and even into the South. And then also that continues for even from the 8th to the 14th. And then after the 14th, it's probably going to change. But still, above average over the West and below average over the Midwest and then even the eastern part of the U.S. And the risk of hazardous temperatures, the excessive heat, there's still a moderate risk of excessive heat from the 8th to the 14th across, the Great Basin kind of area. And then the entire western half of the U.S. and Florida is under a slight risk of excessive heat. In terms of like severe weather and precipitation, this is kind of what the Euro is showing. It shows, this really a daily explosion of severe thunderstorms, kind of east of the Rocky Mountains, kind of the dry line, severe weather events that'll be happening. But then you actually have sort of a system that pushes through that storm that comes in on like Tuesday into Wednesday. You have a big line of strong thunderstorms. This could bring like a MCS derecho event, possibly. That could be possible, going all the way from like Minnesota and then pushing eastward from there through Iowa, Illinois, and then seems like it weakens a little bit, but still thunderstorms in a line going all the way from like really maybe southern Canada, the Great Lakes region, all the way into the south. And then that pushes through and it's probably weaker, but then you still have more severe weather across the Kansas, area on Friday, and then it looks like it actually quiets down. But then the the GFS actually shows something a bit different. It shows kind of a storm on Sunday night into Monday. A line of storms across the northern plains of the Midwest, and then still that strong system going through Tuesday into Wednesday, and then it keeps going all the way from the Midwest to the East Coast over a couple days, and then it kind of goes away. But then you still have the potential for some severe storms. And actually, on this run of the GFS, it doesn't look as bad as it did on the previous run. But the SPC actually, it has the daily kind of severe thunderstorms across the, eastern Colorado, western Kansas, the Texas Panhandle, eastern New Mexico kind of thing for the next couple days, like today and then tomorrow, all the way, even June 2nd, Sunday. And then they actually don't have anything for next week, but this is kind of the CSU model kind of saying that Sunday evening-ish looks kind of significant potentially across this whole area, and then still severe weather potential continues for Monday and Tuesday and also Wednesday, and then it tones down. But we'll have to see what happens with that. This is the Cape, it shows the daily surging Cape, and then it does kind of tone down, but then it could re-erupt in some areas across the GFS showing Cape surging up again across the Kansas and Missouri area, and then pushing a little further north from there into the Great Lakes area. And then this is the supercell composite. It kind of shows the same thing, just up and down, up and down. And there's the potential for some more severe weather events, and especially in mid-June. It looks like this area could see something for sure. And this is the CFS, week 1 supercell composite. It shows, significant severe weather from now till June 6th. And then it actually tones down from June 7th to 13th, a lower amount of severe weather. But then it could come back from June 14th to June 20th. It looks pretty active. And then other than severe weather, you have, above average rain over the Northeast, the kind of the area where we're seeing just daily severe weather events, and then below average precipitation across the northern part of the U.S., the Pacific Northwest, the Northern Plains, all that. And that continues into all the way till June 14th, and then we'll see what happens after that. Now, hurricane season starts June 1st, which is, in less than a day, and there's nothing happening right now. NHC has nothing. And maybe one disturbance in the Eastern Pacific, and on the forecast models, basically nothing. But the interesting thing is that right now, it's pretty unfavorable for any tropical storms, over the next couple weeks. But then once you get to like mid-June, after that, mid to late June, there's the potential for some tropical activity in this kind of region, the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic, before then it gets unfavorable again by early July. So we'll have to see, when we get to this point, in mid-June, see if there's going to be, a lot of tropical storms forming. But we'll see. But it does look like it could be a really active and intense hurricane season ahead. And this is the Climate Prediction Center just showing, a 20% chance of something forming over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Thanks for watching this video. Please be sure to like it, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more severe weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone, out.